Our first episode brings us to the center of town, to what I had grown up seeing my entire life and had just assumed had always been there. Second only to the great oak itself, it would seem that if anything symbolized Paso Robles, it was certainly this monument. I'm talking, of course, about the Great Clock Tower, or Acorn Tower, downtown. The origins of the clock tower take us way back to the origins of the town itself, around the turn of the century, and I'm not talking Y2K. Back then, Paso Robles, or El Paso de Robles, the Pass of the Oaks, was a small agricultural town, much like it is today. In 1857, a pair of brothers, James and Daniel Blackburn, had purchased a 25,000-acre Spanish land grant for no less than $8,000 and developed it into an area filled with cattle ranches, almond and apple orchards, vineyards, dairy farms, and of course, hot springs. It was a midway point between San Francisco and Los Angeles, and had become a rest stop for many of the pioneers traveling along the El Camino Real Trail. Due to its ideal location and good soil, it had become a thriving community by the time it was incorporated as a city in 1889. By that time, the city was owned by the two brothers and by Drury James, uncle of the infamous outlaw Jesse James. It boasted 523 residents and 100 buildings. By 1890, 5 acres of land were donated by the founders in the middle of the city for a park for its citizens. Now in 1892, about the same time as his brother James was working on the second version of the Hotel El Paso de Robles, Daniel Blackburn had 2 brick buildings erected on the opposing corners of 12th and Park. As a gift, he placed a clock tower on the top of the eastern building so that those enjoying the park could see the time. It had bells that tolled every hour and half hour. The idea for its unique acorn shape actually came from his wife Cecilia, who requested it in honor of all the oaks surrounding the Paso Robles area. By the next year, the Bank of Paso Robles opened its doors on the first floor. The second floor became a sort of town meeting place where different organizations, clubs, and groups would gather. Because transportation was not as quick or convenient as it is today, families that lived on the outskirts of town that traveled into the city to do business would often use that second floor as simply a place to rest. Even the ladies' auxiliary would use this space as they made plans for the founding of the Carnegie Library. Just as Blackburn had hoped, this area became the financial and business center of town, and has remained so to today. But being the center of everything that went on in town, through the decades, it became more, however, than just an area for business.
On the east side of the building, on Pioneer Day, they had a street dance. And after the parade and after the bean feed in the park and everything, they'd rope off Park Street from the alley, from Norma Way to 12th Street, and then they would throw rice hulls, scatter rice hulls all over the street, and then usually different bands in the area, usually young kids trying to get a band started. They would come and each band would get so many hours that they could play. Only about 3 hours, but maybe each band played an hour. Well, then all the young people came there and they danced in the street. But I wasn't quite that old yet. But so I went to the street dance because we could run and slide on the rice hulls across the dance floor. And once in a while you get a shoe in their rib or something for some older person. But a lot of kids did that. They loved to go to the street dance and slide on the rice hulls.
On May 1st, 1973, Armand and Mary Mastani purchased the 2 buildings and still own them to this day, renovating them as they went. A little background on the Mastanis is that they've been a force in the community for over 100 years. Bernardo A. Mastani, an immigrant from Italy, came to New York in 1889. He then traveled by train to San Francisco and then took a boat to Santa Barbara. It was there that he learned about farming as he worked on the stock and dairy ranches. He finally found himself in the Paso area by 1893, and Mastani has remained an influential name in the North County ever since. By 73, the building was housing Mary's business, the Style Center, that she had opened 11 years before. She and her husband decided to buy both the entire Blackburn buildings because they said they wanted to help preserve them. Now the Acorn Tower has always been famous to Paso Roblens, but it wasn't until December 22, 2003, that it gained worldwide attention because of the damage done to it and the surrounding buildings during the San Simeon earthquake. The 6.5 quake brought the entire tower down as it shook. Sadly, all of the businesses housed in the building were destroyed. but most tragically, 2 women who were inside at the time perished in the collapse. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger actually declared the downtown of Paso Robles a disaster area. The town reeled in the rubble and the smell of sulfur from the recently disturbed hot spring under the library parking lot for 3 years until the Mustanis were able to replace the tower. Mary wanted to make sure that the tower looked just like the original, but with a few exceptions. The new tower stands a full 2 stories taller than the original, and the acorn cap is made of reinforced steel with a copper outer covering instead of wood. It arrived by truck from where it was constructed by the Vulcan Supply Corporation of Western Vermont. The owner, Larry Stearns, personally delivered it, and then he and his team assembled its 4 pieces on the side of the street in front of the tower. It was later placed on as the cap of the tower. Today the clock tower is standing strong once again, nearly 120 years after it was originally built, continuing to look down on the citizens of Paso Robles as they pass through the park. Only this time, instead of 500, it's more like 30,000.